episode on Nounouche.online, and today I'm joined by an outstanding woman. She's more than just a model. She is Miss South Africa finalist, and also she is fighting for an aim, and she has a mission that she wants to achieve. I'm talking about none other than Melissa Naimuli. Thank you so much for joining us, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Celine. I'm listening to that. I'm like, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about you, darling.
Thank you so much.
I'm literally in awe to sitting right next to you because I've watched your story, Miss South Africa, your journey, such an incredible journey. And today you're sitting here and you get to tell your story. And I think it's such an important story that we get to tell. But first, let's talk about Miss South Africa. This is not your first time.
No, it's not.
Not your first rodeo. So please tell us about your journey in Miss South Africa, and especially this year, why you decided to go back.
Yeah, I think with Miss South Africa, like most young women, we grew up watching Miss South Africa. It was such a childhood dream. You see this gorgeous woman on stage and you think maybe one day I can be them. And I'll be honest with you, it started off like that. So this is my fourth time entering. And I think the first two times I was very young. Yeah. I didn't really understand what the platform was about or what Miss South Africa was. So I thought, okay, cool, let me go try it out. It'll be cool to walk on that stage. And that's all it was. Yeah. But I failed, thankfully, because I absolutely was not ready. But I think what really changed the game for me was, the queen such as Dlamini who walked on that stage and stood for something bigger than just beauty and outer beauty, where they spoke their mind about important societal issues. And I really had to dig deep and focus as to, if I'm entering this pageant, what is it that I want to say? What is it that I need to add within society, and how can I make a change? And that's where I really I had to be honest with myself and deal with demons that I had avoided for so long, and the biggest one being my heritage. So my father's Ugandan, my mother's South African, and where people think, oh, that's cool and exotic, it really wasn't. It was such a big identity crisis for me for so many years. And I entered Miss South Africa to deal with exactly that. Being South African, being Ugandan, dealing with xenophobia in the country, which is a very sensitive issue that most people don't talk about. And I really wanted to go in there with that aim of, let's talk about xenophobia, let's understand it, and more than anything, let's find ways to bring together African unity.
And I love that, you talk about African unity, and it's sad that as South Africans we find ourselves in a situation where we both come from the same continent, but we find ourselves that we find differences. When you look at your journey, being Ugandan and half South African, what has that been like for you?
Sure. I think a lot of learning. There's so many things I've had to learn within my own household. With regards to different cultures, also with my mother's family, my father's family, as much as we're similar, we also are different. And I think we also need to admit to that. Absolutely there are differences. And those things can empower us if we take the time to just learn about them and use them really to unify each other. But also it's beautiful to have them. It's beautiful to learn about other cultures, and I think I always grew up with that. In a home where I spoke English to my dad and Xhosa to my mother, and you can't wear this in this home, and you can wear this in the other one. So I really had to really live in a colorful state. It's been a journey of learning. It is still even to this day where I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. And even learning the language, which is something I really want to do now, where I can speak. I want to learn how to speak Uganda, because I grew up speaking Xhosa. I lived here my whole life, but I really want to dig deep now into figuring out, my other heritage and really exploring that and really understanding it.
I love it, and you talking about it, and it just makes me think that yes, it might have been colorful, as you call it, it's colorful, but also it comes with a lot of challenges. And how has that been for you?
Sure. Challenges for sure. I think when I was in primary school up to high school, I mentioned it earlier when I said I had an identity crisis because I understood what xenophobia was. And I think we need to also unpack the fact that xenophobia is not only, it's not only violent. It's not only when there's violence. Words are xenophobic, people's actions and the way they treat you. And I think growing up as a young girl and hearing people be very disrespectful towards your father, using very derogatory terms, it made me, very scared to admit who I was and to embrace, and to embrace my Ugandan heritage, where I would tell people I'm Xhosa, even try to find a Xhosa name so I could blend in. I'd make sure I speak Xhosa in certain social situations so that I'm not attacked, so to speak. So it was such a big thing where I also felt like I was both a victim of something, but also the perpetrator, because I literally denounced one heritage of who I am in order to find protection. So I was just like, okay, well, who's Ugandan? I can speak Xhosa, I claim to be Xhosa in order to be accepted within the society I live in. But I also saw the pain it caused my own father to do that. So at 27 now, I think I make it a point every time where when people ask about my heritage and who I am, I'm Melissa, but I'm Xhosa and Ugandan. It's not something I want to hide anymore. I want to fully embrace it, because it does then open up the conversations about heritage, about xenophobia, about unity as Africans, and really where we come from and what all of this is about. So yeah, my childhood was definitely challenging. I had a huge, identity crisis, especially as a teenager, where you're trying to figure out, okay, do these boys like me? Am I good in this grade? I'm trying to be like, okay, who am I? Where do I fit in? Am I South African? Am I Ugandan? Which way do I choose? So that was very, that was something else.
It's a challenge, right? And I mean, when you look at it and you're saying that you wanted to go closer, right? Because you wanted to fit in.
Correct.
But then also when you look at it, then the topic of color starts coming up.
Absolutely.
Because then they're like, closer, but why are you on the darker side?
Absolutely.
How has that also been for you, just looking at, how,
the topic of colorism. Oh man, that's
we can go deep.
We can talk about that the entire day. Sure, colorism has been something that I've dealt with since I was a child. I think, whether it's in your community at home, when you're playing with your friends, to when you go to school, that whole thing of the lighter skin you are, the more beautiful you are, or whatever it is, it really kind of like, it was drilled into us to a point where, you also want to be light-skinned. And I think for me it was more challenging because my mother, she's light-skinned, and my older sister's light-skinned. So I'd look at them and think, why don't I look like them? Or they're more beautiful than me, and why do I look like my dad? So that was another part to think, oh my goodness, I'm dark because I'm Ugandan. Another reason to hate being Ugandan. So there was a whole lot of that growing up. I thought, oh man, that's not what it is. Until, of course, growing up, thank goodness we did.
Yes.
Where I look at myself in the mirror now, I'm like, this is all right. I love it. And I think embracing and being confident in your skin truly does start from within, because once I embraced all of my heritage and who I was and understanding where I come from, the color of my skin or the shade of my melanin did not matter.
Exactly, melanin. I love it. Because, exactly, because I have a best friend and she's also dark-skinned, and a lot of times she's South African, proper South African, and a lot of times people ask her, oh, are you from West Africa? And I'm just like, why would you do that? Like, let people be, let them embrace themselves. And I think that also for her growing up, then she's just like, I want to be a lighter skin.
Correct. And I think the whole with that topic is, if you are from West Africa, if you're foreign, it means that, okay, there's something wrong with you. Because it's never meant as a compliment to say, are you from West Africa? Because the darker you are, I remember they used to call my dad, they said, oh, he's Navy, he's this, he's that. So it was just like, guys, we really have a lot of unlearning to do, but also a lot of relearning to do. I mean, and I always say that even myself sitting here, I'm in a position where I'm not saying I've figured all of it out, but I'm constantly making a point of I need to unlearn a lot of things that we were taught and that we are still being taught, even on social media. We see it every day. And I think it's just so important for everyone to just take it upon yourself to just ask why. Ask why. You turn the page, figure it out, because that's the only way we can learn.
Do you think it has changed? I mean, from the time that you grew up and the society that we find ourselves in, has that colorism changed, or are we still in the back ages?
I honestly feel like we are still there, because I've got younger siblings and I just see how they navigate life with regard to their skin color. Yes, it may not be as overt right now where people say it, but I think it still plays so much in terms of when you turn the page in a magazine, what are you seeing? When you watch TV, who is being cast as a lead? Is it a darker skin or is it a lighter skin woman? So I think, yes, we have made some progress, but it's definitely still there, and there's more that can be done to help debunk that. And with us being in positions like this where you're beautiful light skinned women, I'm here and we exist in the same spaces. Also, for someone watching this, they'll understand that it's okay to be literally who you are. And I think that's something we really need to keep on. It needs to be an ongoing lesson.
I mean, we talk about that, and I think everybody is going to listen to this. That's the message. Let's embrace each other. Let's embrace. Whether you.
As cheesy as it sounds, it's so true.
It's so true, and I love that because
so
and I'm so grateful that we have to have this conversation, because I think it also opens people's minds that let's just embrace each other. We are, we're beautiful people.
Whatever you look at, cool, great. We'll take it.
And also just from you, what advice would you give to others, young girls who find themselves in situations like yours, whether it's the color of their skin or, just also trying to find that confidence in themselves to, I'm beautiful as I am. And I think, you spoke about it in your teenage years, you're trying to find who am I? Correct. What is your advice, just from your journey to the that younger girl
Yes.
that's out there?
I think the biggest one for me is to understand there is no quick fix to anything, whether it is answering that question, whereby the biggest thing you need to start with is being honest with yourself. Because sometimes you can think that, I'm okay, and you pretend as if you're okay, and you go through life thinking this is fine. But I think once you start confronting those and having those uncomfortable conversations first with yourself, that's where it really, really starts to change for you. Because, you can walk around ignoring thinking that, it's okay, it's fine, I can deal with it. But I think once you start being honest with with yourself in terms of, okay, what do I like, what don't I like, or what is my actual problem, and then you can start digging deep and answering those questions, because no one else can really answer them for you unless you start with yourself to say, okay, what is going on? And that's definitely what helped me to have those conversations with myself. And then from there, my parents, I think they were my biggest support system growing up, even to this day.
I love parents who are like that, because my parents are the same.
So for them, it was just a matter of they've always had such an open door policy where we could speak, and they were my best friends, with my dad and everything. And I always say the Miss South Africa journey was a love letter to my father, where with everything that happened when we were growing up, I wanted to get on a stage such as this and speak not only for him or about him, about our heritage, but to show him that, look, I've accepted who I am, and who you are is not a problem and has not ruined my life in any way. If anything, it's made it better. And I wanted to stand up for him for a change. I really wanted to stand up for him, and that's why even crown or no crown in South Africa, I really do believe I fulfilled my purpose, whereby the message was heard and it reached as many people as it could have, and I'm forever grateful for that.
I love that, and just talking about your dad and just how he's inspired your journey to Miss South Africa. And I want us to get into that conversation of Miss South Africa, because I think just before the interview we chatted about the glitz and the glam, and it might just look all pretty, and that's all we get to see on TV and on social media. But what happens behind the scenes? Like, I'm sure your emotions are like a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
There. So please tell us about that journey.
Absolutely. It's definitely not all glitz and glam. And I think with Miss South Africa, at the end of the day, we need to understand that those are women, young women, literally your friend, your sister, your neighbor. There is nothing more special about them, different about them, and they don't have a shield of armor where things don't hurt them. We all walk in there with, yes, a purpose, yes, an advocacy, but having an advocacy does not mean it's always easy to carry. Speaking from my experience, it was difficult. When you stand up for something, it's heavy. It's very heavy, and it's hard, and you need to be ready to take the punches, but it's not always easy to do that. So with Miss South Africa, it was literally a gathering of women who said, there's something I want to say, I'm going to use this platform to say it, but I also understand that I'm not perfect. So it was getting to know yourself on such a human level, where you had to be vulnerable, you had to be real with yourself, and you really had to tackle some things and deal with some issues. But also what was so beautiful is that you had other women doing it with you. I really truly experienced sisterhood with Miss South Africa, because when one person falls, someone is there to pick them up. You can cry together, and you're the only one to really understand what's going on in the journey. So I really love that. It was brilliant women, still are brilliant women who go through this process. And yes, there's the glitz and the glam and the photo shoots, and we love that. But I always advise people that, with Miss South Africa, if you don't have a clear purpose of what you want to do with the crown or the platform, maybe you're not ready to enter it, because it really tests you on that. And it's not just a pageant, it's a full-on empowerment platform.
And I love that you talk about the sisterhood, and I think that in society that's exactly what we need. We need sisterhood and women who are backing each other up, So just in what ways were you backing each other up? Because I know it's a journey, so there's a lot that's going on. There's a lot that's going on. So how did you each other to back each other up for that woman empowerment that we speak so much about?
Sure, I will give you some of the funniest and most fickle things where you really saw sisterhood and women empowerment. So leading up to the finale of the show, I think we had like 2 or 3 days of rehearsals, right? And that means you have to rehearse in high heels for a good 2 to 3 days. And man, I'm not a heels girl. I work in television. I'm always in tackies and I'm running around. And most of the girls are in the same position as well, where literally we had blisters on our feet because we were so exhausted. So you'd have a certain girl with plasters, and we'd all plaster each other up and be like, girl, if you've got this, go on stage, go do it. And even rehearsing for like challenges with crown chasers, where we'd have to prepare speeches and things like that. There'd always be someone there to kind of like, okay, let's rework it, let's talk about it, let me hear what your pitch is going to be. And it's not a matter of, oh, I can't tell this person because maybe they might copy it. No, it was like, let me help you improve and do better. And also with Crown Chasers, we were away from home for about a month, so we couldn't see our family for such a long time, and that was very hard, especially for me. So the girls were our family, literally our family, whereby we needed a shoulder to cry on, we needed sweets, we needed to talk, laugh, gossip, whatever it was, we had each other's back. So I really will always treasure those memories.
And that's great memories that we get to share, you know.
I loved it.
I loved it. And as you said, you know, just being there for each other, with this one bringing a plaster for you, I love that.
That's hilarious.
Exactly, but also I think a most like an important topic when you talk about Miss South Africa is also the inclusivity and the diversity when it comes to the pageant. Do you think we've reached that point where we are seeing a lot of diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds coming into Miss South Africa?
Oh, absolutely. I think Miss South Africa has really made strides in terms of diversifying the pageant itself. I know this year they allowed married women with kids to also enter the pageant. You know, if you're transgender, it is welcome to you. And I think that's so important because really, I always say diversity is not just black and white. Really, there is such a pot of different cultures and people, right?
We always think, oh, it's
just black and white. That's it. No. And I think for people to feel accepted in such a space where they feel like, oh, I can belong here as well, I'm included, especially on a woman empowerment platform, the biggest one in South Africa, is such a strong message to send. So I think South Africa has really made strides in that, and I support them and forever be grateful for that, because even women like me are able to enter. You know, no one's questioning, okay, well, are you 100% South African? What is your heritage? Where it's like, you know, you're a woman, you want to make a change? Welcome.
And there's you, Ugandan and South African that came in through.
Exactly.
I love that. And just also looking at your journey, I mean, this year was, as you said, much more different than the years before. What are some of the lessons that you've taken away from South Africa?
Sure. Definitely, I think when I compare 2020 Melissa to 2023 Melissa, I think my confidence in myself and what I have to say, you know, definitely improved. Where I was not looking for approval or validation in terms of, let me say what people want to hear, and let me try structure it in a way that will be, you know. And this time it was just about, this is important, this is what I have to say, and regardless of what happens, and it was very tough. You know, this year I will not lie to you, it was very tough. And I think the toughest one in terms of pushback that I received, I remember when we were announced as the semi-finalists. You know, a time where we were celebrating, I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm like, we get to do this again. Then you log on to Twitter and it's just a whole mess. Where people are judging you, judging your family, and they're just telling you to get off stage. And I won't lie, I cried like a baby. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do.
It hurts.
It hurts. It really, really does hurt. And I was so lost in that space where I thought, oh my goodness, can I actually carry on and do this? But I spoke to a couple of friends, I spoke to my family, and they said, this is exactly why you're doing this and exactly why you came back. So, you know, just push that aside and carry on with your mission, because really if you had to stop now, you prove them right, or no one will speak about this. Because I really look at 2020, I was so scared to maybe say a couple of things, and this time I was like, you know what, it is not just about winning a crown, but really standing here and saying an important message. And that's why when I said, I prayed on the morning of the show, and I said, you know what, God, let your will be done. And I believe it was. You know, when I stood on stage, I said what I had to say with my mission statement. And the biggest gift I received was the reception from South Africa, where you know, on Twitter it went crazy. It was the complete opposite. Where people were like, oh my goodness, we hear you and we understand what you're saying, and we're here to support you, and let's drive this mission together. And I think that was so important within my journey, which is what is carrying me through now, to say, you know what, we can do it together. Yes, negativity will always be there, but there are also so many people who are positive and who want to drive change. And I think we often focus on the negativity so much that we forget that there are people who really want to listen.
That want to actually support you.
That want to support you, and those voices are much bigger and much you know, and much more potent. But we don't forget that, because you know, as human as we are, negativity does kind of like ring louder.
It does.
It does ring louder. We're all like, we want to listen to that and look at that. But I think for me, getting that lesson to say that, you know what, yes, this exists, but this does too, and rather put your energy and focus towards that. So,
and I mean, putting yourself in the spotlight. You know, you're putting yourself out there. Putting yourself out there, so you are going to get those negative, you're going to get the positive comments, but navigating social media. How do you manage to navigate social media? Because you know what, I won't lie. Yes, I am in this in the industry. I have to be on social media, but I find myself where I just want to days not be on social media, because sometimes people can say hurtful things and you mess up your whole day.
Absolutely.
So how do you
comment or anything?
One comment out of the 20 comments that are actually really good, you take that
one person sitting there. You'll be like,
So how do you manage, like, just to block it all out?
being in the spotlight. It's funny because part of my day job, I work in television,
Yes.
but I'm behind the scenes. So I'm very comfortable behind the scenes and behind the camera.
I think I understand.
You know what I mean? That's where I live. I thrive over there.
Yeah.
So Miss South Africa was a big shock to most people to say, okay, but you are usually in tech and tracksuits. What are you doing in front of the camera? And for me, I've never been a big spotlight person. I really enjoyed just kind of like, just laying low.
Yeah.
But it was a huge shift for me where I really had to figure out, I think, what I was using social media for, where it was not a matter of posting for the sake of it. Even now, I'm like, if I've got nothing to say, you're not saying anything. If there's nothing to share, there's none of that. But you're right, it is part of your job to say, okay, how are you using social media to either reach people, sell something, teach, whatever it may be. So it was very difficult for me to say, okay, let me open up my life to this. And there was social media and also a reality show. So I had both things to juggle. I'm like, oh my goodness, and everything's always taken out of context. I'm like,
I know, people will twist your words.
Yeah. So I was just like, oh snap! Someone watches the show and they think, oh, this is what she meant.
Yes,
It wasn't that deep, but okay.
But it's okay. Yeah.
So I think it's taken a lot of that way. Even as the girls would say, the best thing to do, just don't read the comments. Maybe sometimes switch off, especially if there's an important challenge or elimination during the show or something big happening. I think I've had to teach myself to switch off. I've been tempted to respond. I won't lie to you. I think I did once or twice.
And that's the worst thing, because then they feel like, okay, I got under his skin, so I'll try it again.
I don't like, I responded, then I blocked the person.
So they try to respond.
I was just like, I need to say something to you. So I was just like, okay, cool, bye. But I think it takes a lot though, because I mean, I don't think anyone can easily accept being attacked in any type of form. It's not an easy thing to experience.
It knocks your confidence as well.
It does. So you have to think, oh my goodness. But then again, who is that person? Why are they trying to say something so hurtful? How do I block it out? So
yeah, because they're sitting behind a phone. They're sitting behind a laptop.
They don't even know you.
They don't know you. They don't know the person.
They don't even know
all
you.
they see is the person on television,
Absolutely.
the person on social media. They don't know who Melissa really is, so they attack you. But also when you look at just your journey and everything that has been happening, I mean, it's a beautiful journey. It really is. But also, what are you doing just to give back to communities and also to the younger generation that's coming up?
True. So it has been an absolutely beautiful journey, and I'm very blessed with everything that has happened post-pageant. And the biggest thing I'm working on now is my own documentary that I'm going to produce and co-direct for the first time ever, which is very scary, on the stage of Miss South Africa.
Scary but beautiful.
Yeah, scary but beautiful. I'm ready for it, but I'm like, oh snap. I'm like, oh snap. And I stood on the Miss SA stage and I said that I think the most important thing is for us as Africans to start telling our own stories. Because too many times we're told who we are, what to think, how to behave, and and most of the time it's not very positive things. And I think once we take control of our own narrative, that's very important. And I wanted to start with that to say, okay, let me actually produce a documentary. Let me have my own something to add to this narrative. That's the biggest thing I am busy with right now. I'm hoping to launch before the end of this year.
We're crossing fingers and crossing toes.
Yes, so toast is becoming a real thing. I remember after Miss SA, everyone started saying hashtag toast, which is how I started this. And I think storytelling has always been a big part of my life, who I am. And I love doing it even now. Still very much into filmmaking, but I'm ready to kind of like take that director's seat and take that producer seat and tell my own stories.
And we'll be here, we'll be watching, we'll be supporting. Yes, we will be. But also just to wrap up our conversation, and also, you're such an inspiration.
Thank you so much.
You're an inspiration, you're a role model also for young girls looking up to you.
Thank you so much.
When you look into that camera and you talk to those young girls who are actually watching this interview, what is your message to them?
The biggest one is nobody knows you better than you. No one can tell you who you are. No one can try to shape who you are, because you know you better than you. So trust that.
I love that. Thank you so much, Melissa, for having this conversation. It's out of, as you say, my comfort zone.
So we did this together, okay?
We did this together, and I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation. And my first one being in the model, the pageant era, pageant space for me. So it's my first one, and I'm so glad that I got this honor to do it with you.
Thank you so much, Celine. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for making me comfortable.
And that's a pleasure. Thank you so much, everyone.